I've got a customer running a Honda Rancher 350 with 30,000 miles on the original piston, never been apart. Meanwhile, guys are grenading brand new quads before the warranty's even up. The difference isn't luck, and it isn't the badge on the tank. It comes down to 8 things, and almost everybody gets them wrong. Number 1, stop thinking in miles and start thinking in hours. This one I see constantly. A guy buys a used four-wheeler, sees 800 miles on it, and thinks he found a baby. But that machine spent its whole life idling around a farm pulling a sprayer at walking speed. Low miles, monster hours. On the flip side, a desert quad can rack up miles going nowhere near the wear a mud machine sees. So miles lie to you, but hours never lie. Treat your engine like a little diesel generator, because that's basically what it is. If yours doesn't have an hour meter, go buy a cheap one and wire it to the spark plug lead. 20 bucks, 10 minutes. Now you service by hours the way the machine actually lived. And the number people abuse the most on that meter is the break-in. Those first few hours are when the rings wear into the cylinder wall. Get that right, and the engine holds its power for the rest of its life. During break-in, the engine sheds a bunch of tiny metal shavings, and they all end up floating in your oil. Polaris says dump that break-in oil at 25 hours. Honda and Yamaha are right around 20 hours. Miss that first change, and you're literally sandpapering your own bearings. I'd rather change break-in oil early than 1 hour late. But an oil change won't save you if you're feeding the engine dirt, which brings me to the mistake I see wreck the most engines. Number 2, your air filter decides how long the top end lives. Dust is abrasive. It's basically fine sand. And the second any of it sneaks past the filter, it rides straight down into the cylinder and starts scoring the bore and the rings. I pulled a top end apart on a Sportsman with barely 1,000 miles once. The owner swore he babied it. Turned out the intake boot had a loose clamp, dust was bypassing the filter entirely, and the rings were stuck solid in a machine that should have been brand new. That repair was not cheap, and it was 100% avoidable. This one trips people up. On a foam filter, it's the oil that catches the dirt, not the foam. A dry foam filter lets dust walk right through it like it isn't even there, so oil it properly. And if you run paper, never blast it clean with an air compressor because you'll blow the holes wide open and it stops filtering anything. The other sneaky spot is the grommet, where the filter seals to the airbox. Smear a little grease on it so dust can't crawl around the edge. Then reach in and make sure that intake boot clamp is actually tight. 2-minute check that saves you a $2,000 engine. So if you ride dusty, check that filter every single ride. Now let's talk about the thing that starts more brand arguments than anything else. Number 3, gear drive versus belt drive, and how to keep a belt from betraying you. I'll say it plainly, and the comments can fight about it. A geared Honda will outlast a belt-driven machine, full stop. There's no rubber belt in there to slip, stretch, cook, or snap. That's a big reason those old Rancher and Foreman machines just refuse to die. A belt ages even sitting still. Every heat cycle dries it out a little more. Now here's where I'll upset the Honda diehards too, because I'll pick on everybody. If you're buying one of these to keep forever, get the foot shift, not the electric shift. Those electric shift Rubicon and Foreman machines have a little shift sensor that likes to fail, and then guys are out here chasing shifting problems that come and go, swapping parts for years. Honda even tosses a manual shift lever in the toolkit, which should tell you exactly how much they trust it. And if you want the real tanks nobody ever talks about, go find an old Suzuki King Quad 400 or a Honda TRX 300 4-tracks. Dead simple, geared, and almost impossible to kill. But even a bulletproof Honda has a weak spot, so let me get back to belts before one strands you. I'm not telling you to sell your Grizzly or your Outlander either. Belt machines last a long time too, if you respect the belt. Start the day you install a new one. Wash it in hot soapy water first to strip off the slippery factory coating, then break it in gentle. Polaris literally tells you to vary your speed and stay off wide open throttle for the first several miles. Skip that and you'll glaze the belt and it'll slip forever. And after any water crossing, do the belt burp. Every clutch housing has a drain plug down low. Pull it, let the water dribble out, put it back, then blip the throttle to spin the water off the belt and clutches. Because a wet belt slips and a slipping belt turns to smoke in a hurry. I've seen a big sportsman lose all drive in less than 2 feet of water because the housing filled up. Seal that clutch cover with silicone if you cross water a lot. But all of that belt talk is nothing compared to the quietest killer on the list, and it hides on the machines everybody calls bulletproof. Number 4. On a Honda, tight valves make no sound at all, and that silence is what burns the valve. Everybody's trained to listen for a ticking valve. Tick, 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 and you figure it's time for an adjustment. Except that's the trap. When the valve lash on a Honda goes out of adjustment, it usually goes tighter, not looser. And a tight valve is dead silent. It just quietly stops closing all the way, and now it can't shed its heat into the seat, so it cooks itself. By the time you notice the machine's down on power, you've already burned an exhaust valve. Honda knows this. That's why they want the first valve check crazy early, right around 20 hours, then every 100 hours after that. On a pushrod rancher, we're talking 6 thousandths on the intake, 9 thousandths on the exhaust. You set them cold with a feeler gauge, and it's one of the easier jobs on the whole machine, believe it or not. A 15-minute check with a feeler gauge is all it takes. Skip it, and you're paying me to put a new valve in. That's the trade. But heat isn't the only thing that quietly destroys these machines. Sometimes it's the opposite. Number 5. Water is the silent killer, and milky oil is the machine screaming for help. If you ever pull a dipstick or a diff plug and it looks like coffee with too much creamer in it, that's water. In the engine, it's a milky brown. In a differential, it comes out like gray soup. And here's where guys go wrong. They drain it, refill it, and call it fixed. But you didn't fix anything. Water got in through a worn seal or a breather line, and until you fix that hole, it's just going to happen again. That watery gear oil can even freeze into sludge in winter and grind your gears to shavings. On a mud machine, extend those differential breather lines up high, zip tie them under the seat. That one cheap trick keeps the diffs from sucking water in every time a hot gear case hits a cold puddle. So build yourself a post-mud ritual and do it every single time. Wash it gentle, pull the belt drain, check both diffs for that milky color, and swap the oil if it's there. Change your engine oil if there's any chance water got in. Then hit every grease zerk and inspect your CV boots for tears. One torn boot slings its grease, packs itself full of grit, and that gritty paste chews up a CV joint in just a few miles. 20 minutes after a muddy ride buys you years. And if you had a serious water day, like you sank it or crossed something deep, change your fluids. Then run it a little and change them again after about 10 hours. That second change flushes out whatever water you missed the first time. Real quick, before we keep going, if this is saving you a repair bill, do me a favor and hit subscribe. That's the whole ask, no strings. Now let's get into the stuff even the good owners forget. Number 6. The fluids you never think about are the ones that kill the drivetrain. Everybody changes engine oil. Good for them. But I'd bet you can't remember the last time you touched the front differential fluid, let alone the rear gear case. Half the shops out there never crack those open, so they go years and years past due. That oil turns to metal-filled sludge and takes the gears with it. Put it on the calendar and always change it after a deep water day. Then there's coolant, the fluid everybody forgets on any liquid-cooled quad. Everybody assumes coolant lasts forever, but it doesn't. After about 2 years, the rust protection in it wears out, and the coolant actually turns acidic. Then it starts eating your aluminum water pump and radiator from the inside. So a $10 jug you ignored just became a $400 pump job. Yamaha wants fresh coolant every 2 years in the Grizzly, and that's a good rule for just about anything. It's a cheap jug of fluid that protects some very expensive aluminum. Then there's grease. After every wet or muddy ride, hit the A-arms, the ball joints, the steering, and the wheel bearings with a good marine grease. Wheel bearings are the first thing water and mud murder on these machines. A grease gun is the cheapest insurance you'll ever buy. But you can do all of this perfectly and still wreck your machine in about 90 seconds on wash day. Let me explain. Number 7, your pressure washer is doing more damage than the trail ever did. This is my controversial one, so come at me. Half the machines people call unreliable were made that way by their owner and a pressure washer. That 1,500-pound pressure washer wand feels like it's cleaning, but it's blasting water straight past bearing seals and jamming it into every electrical connector on the machine. Then a month later, the four-wheel drive quits, or it won't shift, and everybody blames the brand. But it wasn't the brand. It was Sunday afternoon with the washer. There's an old mechanic saying, "I love." The used machine that looks like it's never once been washed is usually the one with the best bearings underneath. The showroom clean one that gets power washed weekly is the one that's rotten. Water getting in doesn't care how pretty it looks. And put down the degreaser while you're at it. All those heavy cleaners strip the grease right out of your CV boots and your bearings. So wash it on a low setting, keep the wand off the seals, the connectors, and the radiator fins, and re-grease afterward. Then take 5 minutes and pack your electrical connectors with dielectric grease, especially on a Kawasaki Brute Force, because those connectors love to corrode and take your four-wheel drive with them. Do that, and your electrical gremlins basically disappear. So wash your quad like you're rinsing a baby, not blasting a driveway. Which leads to the last one, the mistakes that happen when you're not even riding. Number 8. Parking your quad wrong is its own kind of damage. The enemy here is the pump gas in your tank. That ethanol-blended fuel actually pulls water right out of the air, and if it pulls in enough, the fuel separates into a nasty sludge layer that drops to the bottom and ruins the whole tank. On top of that, ethanol dries out your rubber lines and turns the fuel in your carburetor into a hard varnish that plugs every tiny passage. I've cleaned more gummed-up carburetors from bad storage than from actual riding. So before winter, fill the tank up almost full with fresh gas, add a fuel stabilizer, and run the engine 5 or 10 minutes so the treated fuel actually reaches the carb or the injectors. A nearly full tank also stops the daily water buildup that rusts a tank from the inside out. On a carbureted machine, drain the float bowl too, and throw a battery tender on it, because cold weather kills a battery faster than anything. One more thing that matters year-round. Quit taking your quad on tiny cold trips and shutting it right back off. A cold engine never gets hot enough to boil the water and fuel out of the oil, and that junk just sits there corroding things. Let it warm all the way up. Let it heat cycle. Your engine wants to run, not sit. So there's your 8. Do them, and 3,000 hours isn't a dream, it's just Tuesday. And notice not one of these was some expensive upgrade or a bottle of magic additive. It's all just catching the boring stuff before it turns into a repair bill. The high-hour survivors aren't lucky. They're just the owners who fixed the small thing before it became the big one. Before you head out, if you ride in any kind of mud or water, go watch my other videos next. See you in the next one.